Good morning, guys. Monday. I'm sorry about my voice. I don't think I have a cold or something, but uh, we'll be fine though. Okay. Mondays we have to start strong, and that's what we're gonna do. Per use, I'm gonna start with some feedback, and I'm gonna also tell you what we have to do on Sunday, and of course, I'm gonna finish this video app uh, by covering chapter 8, which is about leadership. All right. So this is week 7. And I didn't see any of you, none, zero. Okay. In the synchronous meeting. And I don't know why. So I don't have any feedback. Is it like you were busy, schedule conflict, what's going on, or you don't have any questions or whatever? Just let me know, okay? Again, office hours tomorrow. You can email me anytime. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you have any feedback. And please make sure you check your email, because if you don't do any of the above, there's no other way for me to reach you. Okay, so for yesterday, midnight Sunday, you had to submit LO7, and the mean score is 80%. I'm going to say what I'm usually saying: do not rush it. Okay, the mean score should be pretty close to 100%, because it's only 5 questions and the answers are in the PowerPoint slideshow. Just take your time. Please take your time. Again, I see a direct correlation between time spent in the LO and your score. So just give it a little bit of time, all right? Give it a little bit of time. Now, the LP is pretty good. Very satisfied. I have my notes right here. I like it. You become better and better. So I'm proud of you, and I want to encourage you to read your feedback. And as you're reading your feedback, to take it in a constructive way, so you can become better. Okay? I'm not trying to judge you in a negative way. Now for the PDOs, again, very good job. I send you, of course, already your scores and your individualized feedback. In general, I see a lot of people reading off of the slides, so do not do that. Create slides that are lighter and just talk about whatever you're trying to present. Make them more visual. Put a picture and talk about it, right? Don't put a lot of information on the slides. That's not very intriguing. If you're trying to make me stay connected with you and interested in your presentation, not me, your audience in general, right? Read your audience, know who you are talking to, and adjust and make it interesting, okay? Make it very interesting. That's some general feedback. Now I'll share my screen and I'll go to our Moodle site. Let's see if it's working, hopefully. Yes. So I'll go all the way down and we are here. October now, right? Chapter 8, leadership, as I said. And what you have for next week is LO8. And make sure you know who's presenting LPs learning from practice and who's presenting PDOs, which is your professional development opportunity. Where do you find that information again? All the way up here, okay? All the way up here. This is a list of topics for PDOs. This is a list for topics for LPs. And in the forum, you can find your group, okay? If you're not sure, let me know. I don't want you to submit the wrong LP or skip the one that you should submit. So just let me know. You should know by now, but just let me know. All right. I'll stop sharing this and I'll start sharing the PowerPoint slideshow. Now, in this one, we're talking about leadership. Okay. The thing with leadership is that is arguably the most researched, yet least understood topic in the context of management. And it's funny, it's not funny, but it's interesting that we have already talked about leadership in the sports sci class. I think it was last week. And we talked about leadership and management, which is something that we're going to cover today. We talked about some theories, and we're going to cover some theories today from the management perspective. Though I want you to understand that we're talking about at least 2,000 books per year on leadership. Okay, so it is very popular. But also, if we're trying to define leadership, and we're going to see that in a second, right? We have so many different definitions, which brings us back to that there is like a serious and widespread academic debate. Um, today, we'll provide a general outline of the different approaches that have been used to describe and analyze leadership. And when we talk about those theories of leadership, I'm going to try to break them down. Hang in there. I know majority of people are not fond of theories because like very dry, but I'll try to break it down, give some examples. In most of our discussion will take place in reference to the leadership challenges that confront sport management. Okay. All right. So the very first thing, as we do a lot of time, is talk about definitions. So what is leadership? It is not easy to find agreement among any group, psychologists or sports management or whatever, on a definition of leadership. Um, leadership can be many things to different people, and usually in class, I take a marker, I go close to the board, and I'm like, okay, give me qualities of a leader, and then you actually see that different people think leadership is see it different. And I'll give you some examples. I have it here in my notes. So for the very well-known Green Bay Packers coach, Vince Lombardi, right? He said, leaders are made, they are not born. And they are made just like anything else has been made in this country by hard effort. So he throws in that too. And that's the price that we all have to pay to achieve that goal or any goal. Now, US President Theodore Roosevelt, the best executive is the one who has sense enough to pick good men to do what he wants done, and self-restraint enough to keep from meddling with them while they do it. Okay, so we saw an example from sports, one from politics. If we go towards scholars, like Linda Hill, who's in Harvard, and she's considered an expert in leadership. She's a professor there. In general, she argues that in today's society and business environment with multiple stakeholders making decisions, we may well have to lead from behind. Lead from behind. That's how the word she's using in order to let others take charge as leaders when it is most needed. How like for us though, when we talk about leadership, we're gonna use it in a way to describe it as influencing and enabling others towards the attainment of aspirational goals. That's how we're gonna use it today. All right. Now we have different kinds of theories about leadership. And the dominant theories from the sports management perspective or the management perspective are four: trait approaches or personality approaches, behavioral approach, contingency approach, and transactional versus transformational approach. In the third one, as you can see, we're going to break it down. We're going to give three specific examples as we go on. Again, I don't want you to get overwhelmed. I want you to I want you to hang in there with me, and we'll figure it out. Okay, I'll try to explain everything as we go. Now, let's go with the first one. So here, this one is, the trait or personality approach is one of the older or the earlier kind of ways when we try to explain leadership. And it talks pretty much about that innate ability. You're born with it, right? And again, I would go to the board when I would be in class, and I would like, give me characteristics. And I would like work ethic, charismatic and stuff. So they're gonna, all these things, they try to explain with this theory that you're born with it. Okay, so they really tried to find all these traits that make those great leaders, Alexander the Great, Napoleon, and whatnot. But it didn't really work out. So although empirical evidence linking the personality of leaders with their traits, pretty much, or actually their success is weak, much of the popular literature still focuses on leadership traits. Okay, so we still hear about it. In general, the trait theories are based on the assumption that social, as you can see in our slideshow, background, physical features, and personality characteristics will distinguish good leaders from poor leaders. But again, it comes back to that innate ability. All right, so that's not something that is working very well for us. So now we have the behavioral approach. And we're going to stay here a little bit because I think it's pretty interesting, because when it became clear, that the good leadership could not simply be explained on the basis of some innate characteristics, then the organizational research shifted. So they started focusing on discovering universal behaviors, not traits, behaviors of effective leaders. And so those behavioral strategy, the behaviors in general, see those behaviors as signs of learned, that's the key word, of learned responses to contingencies. So the behavioral approach pretty much says you're not born with it, but you can learn how to do it because it's just a behavior. In the beginning, they came up with Taylorism, and Taylorism saw humans as part of a machine. So you can instruct them what to do, and they will do it. And that theory didn't really focus on the human side of the mass production movement. So it didn't really focus on humans. So then behaviorists came back and said, look, in response to that theory, Taylorism, we need a new human relationship approach, as you can see in the beginning of our slide. So an example of that was theory X and theory Y that was developed by McGregor. And he says that it depends on how the manager sees the subordinates. So if the employees are seeing that they dislike work, we're talking about theory X. If the employees are seen as self-motivated, then we're talking about theory Y. So if a leader is more a theory X person, right, he or she will think that the employees, the subordinates, need closer supervision. Why? Because we just said they don't like working. Okay. Now, if the leader is more theory Y person, then they would give them more autonomy, which comes with more responsibility. And by them, I mean the subordinates. So, are you theory X or theory Y leader? Do you feel, do you think, what's your perception about employees in general? So, based on that, your behavior will change, which means your leadership style will change. Another example of behavioral approaches has to do with the Blake and Wooden theory. And they said for them, it was about, as a leader, like the creator continued, are you concerned for people more or for production more? So for them, those different levels of concern will affect the leadership style. Also, there was a combination. If you have a low level of concern for people and production, it would be a different leader than somebody who had a high level of concern for people and production. That's the point here. So ultimately, it is important to conclude that the behavioralist approach to leadership leads to the identification of different styles that can be described as more or less successful. Now, let's move to the contingency approach. And here we're going to talk about three sub-theories. In these approaches, it was clear that traits and behaviors of leaders were often observed in relation to the situation at hand. Or in other words, according to the situational contingencies. Okay, so now we said, the trait theories didn't really explain everything. The behavioral approaches didn't really explain everything. Maybe it's the situation that makes the difference. And in those kind of theories of leadership, the core argument is that different leadership styles will apply to a range of possible management situations. And a lot of times we use as an example, and that may help you, Diego Armando Maradona, right? If you don't know which footballer, which soccer player is that one, look him up, right? Huge, he was like, he's most likely the most well-known football player from Argentina, and he was big time in the 80s for sure. However, we're using him as an example because when he was playing for his national team, they won the World Cup. Then he played in Italy, played in Spain as well, Barcelona. And then, even on top of all this, he became the coach of the national team, the football team of Argentina. And he wasn't that successful. He didn't show up as a great leader as he did when he was a player for the national team. And that's an example to say we have, the same person, same traits, and he tried to excuse me, he behaved the same way. However, when the situation changed, everything changed. And I'm sure you've seen, very good coaches, very good players, and they just move to another team and they get lost, or they just rise to the top. Why? Right? Assuming the traits are the same, the behaviors are the same, right? So the centrality of leader behavior and or personality needs to be de-emphasized. And in this kind of approach, we're going to turn the attention to the leader in conjunction with the circumstances. Um, so examples of that are those three sub-theories or theories: Fiedler approach or theory, Harrison Blanchard, and the path goal theory. And we're going to go and explain one by one. So here, first of all, we talked about leadership, and in this specific model, which is not, recent, it's from 1967. So in this model, we talked about the interaction between the leader's personal characteristics and some aspects of the situation. We'll also talk about leaders that are either task-oriented or person-oriented. And also, we talked about the effectiveness of the leader, that it is determined by the leader's control of the situation. So for Fiedler, um, the manager could rank a peer based on a binary system. So that instrument could be used to assess those co-workers by pleasant or unpleasant, cold or warm, supportive or hostile. And at the end, after you assess your co-workers using that instrument, you have workers that have low LPC, which is the least, as you can see, preferred co-worker, LPC, low LPC score, or high LPC score. And a low LPC score person is more motivated by task achievements. And if the task is fine, then he or she will focus on personal relationships with anybody else. The high LPC score person is the opposite, is the person who's more interested in relationships. And if that's accomplished, then he or she will focus on the task. And this model further suggests, and we'll see a table right after this slide, that control is dependent on three combined contingency variables. Okay, one, the relationship between the leader and the followers. Two, the degree of task structure. And three, the leader's position of power or amount of authority, which will yield, as you can see here, 8 different conditions, right? So based on all these three and how they're combined, we have these 8 conditions. So we have low LPC up here, down here, and then high LPC. And as I said before, the low LPC person is more interested in the task than the relationships, when the high is more interested in the other way around. However, you can see that when we combine all these three, because these three are combined contingency variables, we get 8 different conditions, okay? And that's the Fiedler's model. Agent B, a situational leadership. So here, it claims that the maturity of the group, as the maturity of the group changes, the leader behavior should change as well. So when we have low levels of maturity, as you can see in our slide, a high task behavior of the leaders should be exhibited. Now at medium levels of maturity, leaders need to be more focused on the relationship behaviors. And when we have a high level of maturity, we should focus on a more supportive in a delegation-driven style of leadership. In other words, as again, the maturity level is low, we need to control people in a way more, right? We don't trust them that much, maybe because it's the relationship or the task or both. as the maturity levels go up, we trust them more, we give them more autonomy, we support them more, and we'll let them do their thing more. So again, if we are able to identify the level of maturity, then we can adjust our leadership style. That's what the Agent B theory says. And the last example is the path goal theory. So here we're talking about leader. The leader must select a style, the style that is most appropriate to the particular situation, and then we have, and by situation I mean that the characteristics of the subordinates and the characteristics of the environment both are determining the style because they affect, as you can see, the motivation and the satisfaction of the workers. So we come up with 4 different styles right here. So we have 4 styles, as I said, and the first one, the leader gives specific instructions, expectations, and guidance. In the second one, the leader shows concern and support for subordinates. In the third one, the subordinates participate in the decision-making process. And in the last one, the leader sets challenges, emphasizes excellence, and shows confidence that subordinates will attain high standards of performance. So, in other words, with directive leadership is predicted to have a positive effect on subordinates when the task is ambiguous, but will have a negative effect when the task is clear. Right? So different style for different situations. Supportive leadership is predicted to increase job satisfaction, specifically when the conditions are adverse. Okay, the participative leadership is predicted to promote satisfaction due to involvement, and the achievement-oriented leadership is predicted to encourage higher performance standards and increase expectancies that desired outcomes can be achieved. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about the last one that brings 2 things against each other: transactional leadership and transformational leadership. And we'll see which one could be better. Okay. Now, these are the more recent theories. So the transactional leadership is more, as the word says, transactional. So you give something, you get something. All right. So you, in a way, you reward your subordinates, your employees, and as you can see, we have 4 types. So the first one, the leader uses rewards or incentives to achieve those results. In the second one, we have active management by exception, in which the leader actively monitors the work performed and uses corrective methods to ensure the work meets accepted standards. The third one looks similar, but is not passive management by exception. In this one, the leader uses those corrective methods as a response to unacceptable performance. So if something unacceptable happens, then the leader intervenes. And the last one, laissez-faire leadership, here the leader is kind of indifferent, hands-off approach, so he or she lets them do their thing. Okay. However, no matter which one, you pick, the theorists have argued that this kind of leadership that includes that transaction is pretty much, workers work for wages or that kind of incentives. And that cannot work in the long run. So that shouldn't be something that you should choose if you're really thinking about the future. Okay, if you're really thinking about long run or a long-term view of leadership, we have, wait, give me a second. Okay, transformational leadership. And in this one, we don't have that kind of relationship anymore. Okay, in this one, not only it is aligned and elevates the needs of the subordinates, but also this one provides that intellectual stimulation and increases followers' confidence. Here we have, as you can see, the four I's. Okay, idealized influence, inspirational motivation, intellectual stimulation, and individualized consideration. So the first one, uh, with the first one, the leaders behaving in ways that result in them being admired, respected, and trusted. And at the very end, they're becoming a role model. Okay? So here we have high standards of ethical and also moral conduct. In the second one, the leader is demonstrating enthusiasm and optimism. And by that, it arouses the team spirit and it's more inspiring. So the followers want to work for them because they feel that commonality when it comes to the end goal. The third one, the intellectual stimulation, here the leader is innovative, creative, supporting. He or she is reframing the problems. They're questioning all the assumptions. So here the environment is very different. It's stimulating and is very encouraging for the employees or the subordinates. And the last one here, the leaders pay special attention to each person, so each person's individualized needs, uh, and what kind of needs? Needs for achievement and needs for growth. So that's what it's making difference. So that the leader, in a way, comes up and becomes a mentor, a coach. Okay, and a lot of people say that this is the modern way to lead. All right, this is something that is pretty common in most chapters that have to do with leadership, the differentiation between a manager and a leader, right? We're not going to say that one of them is more important than the other. And you can see the manager is more about planning and budgeting, stuffing, all this kind of stuff. And the leader is more about, finding that vision, okay? And inspiring, connecting all these people going towards whatever vision we have. A lot of time we say the leader must manage and the manager must lead, right? However, in a lot of cases, we may have two people that come together and work together in a harmonious way. And we have a leader and a manager, and then just together, just boom, they flourish. Why? Because you may have a head coach and an assistant coach. You may have a general manager, and maybe you have an associate manager. And one of them is the leader, and the other one is more the manager. So when they come together, they complement each other, right? Again, the leader is more about vision, about inspiring people, motivating people, making them buy in a way, right? To invest their time and energy. And the manager comes down and just pretty much breaks it down into steps and numbers and this by then. And both of them, of course, are really important. You can't have success if you only have one of them. Okay, with leadership, you know where you're going. Management is pretty much how we're going to do it. But you can't have good management if leadership sucks, right? So again, as you can see at the very end of this slide, both of them are required. So let's talk a little bit more about leadership, since this is the title of the chapter. So a leader has to do all these 5 things. And these are core functions, no matter how you see it, and no matter what kind of sport management organization you're thinking. So we have that: creating a vision, developing strategies, setting objectives for performance, influencing and motivating people, and facilitating change and nurture culture. So when we talk about creating a vision, we say that the vision is a state of the future that lies beyond the directly imaginable by most people. Right? That's a nice way to put it. Now, for the second function, planning, right, is all about the different ways that a vision pretty much can be achieved. Now, objectives for performance. How are we going to link measurable outcomes to those strategies we just talked about in the second core function? Now, four, influence, as we said, and motivate people. Where setting the objectives is important in making people aware of the targets of performance, like where exactly we're going. The actual activation and application of people's skills is critical at this stage, because you're trying to steer people in a certain direction. How are you going to do that? And then the fifth one is about facilitating change. As a manager, you need to accept that in this day and age, change is inevitable, change will happen, whether you like it or not, and it is constant. It is constant. So as a leader, where if you are incapable of assisting others to understand why changing sometimes is needed and how this change can be achieved, then you can be a good leader. So you need to establish that you understand that change is inevitable and constant, and be able to explain that to people so they buy in, and to tell them how they need to change, so as the organization not only survive but also thrive in this century. And that's pretty much it. I'm going to read the take-home points as I usually do, a little bit more than usual. Irrespective of leadership type or style, leaders are goal-oriented. They influence others, or they empower others. They need to remain focused on the big picture. They need others to achieve their goals, and they have strong character. Theoretical approaches to leadership: trait personality, behavioral, and contingency approaches. We also talked about the difference between transactional and transformational leadership, and also managers versus leaders, right? Last thing, the functions of leaders: creation of a vision, setting out of a strategy, setting objectives and measuring performance, influencing and motivating people, facilitating change, and nurturing organizational culture based on that change facilitation. I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you, guys. I hope you had a great weekend. I hope you have an even better week. Tomorrow, office hours from 8 in the morning to 12:30 in the afternoon. Let me know if you have any questions, and or email me if you can attend office hours, right? In the meantime, live intentionally, not habitually. Bye, guys.